But what I wanted to talk today about was some of the things that women do in an Elul kind of centered way. And I, in particular, want to talk about um, Feldmesterins, which I actually have talked about before when we've done these shofar things. But you can keep saying the same things year after year because nobody remembers, including the person who talked about them the first time. Um, so Feldmesterins were women who did a specific task, often during the month of Elul. They were people that went and took a piece of string and measured around a grave. And then they took this string and made it became the wick for candles. And so there's a lot of traditions around this, but this was most often practiced during the month of Elul because the candles were intended for Yom Kippur. Um, the Feldmesterin were women who often did a lot of other kinds of things, but unfortunately, the just historically, things that women do are less valued and sometimes looked upon with aspersions. And so the Feldmesterin lists of women doing this job often appear alongside other superstitious kinds of things like witchcraft, for instance, and other unfortunate sorts of things like this. But this is what there's a tradition in the Ashkenazi area, so in Eastern Europe, for centuries, basically, of these women doing this, making these ritual candles, knetlich legen, placing of wicks, which makes the candles. So the this act of encircling the grave and of having this string touch the ground was believed to create a connection with deceased ancestors to ask them for forgiveness or for the advocacy with God on behalf of the living. And so that also the whole forgiveness thing also really ties into this idea of why these candles came into Yom Kippur, why this practice was going on during Elul, where these people were feeling this connection to their ancestors and trying to find avenues of forgiveness. And while the candles were being made, there were these, in Yiddish, the word I think is Tkhines, Tchinot in Hebrew, which were special prayers in Yiddish that were developed specifically for women. And these prayers were, they kind of came out of a time when women were not literate in Hebrew, for sure. And some women read Yiddish, and they certainly were more literate in Yiddish than they were in Hebrew. And so the Siddurim and prayer books that were available to the men were not really accessible for the women. And actually, some of the rabbis started realizing this and started developing these Tkhines, which were prayers in Yiddish, specifically for women. So they dealt with women's issues. Like there would be prayers for childbirth, prayers for certain times of the month, for women's cycles, prayers for things that women did. And this was a pretty unusual thing for the time. In 1590 in Prague, the first pamphlet was printed with 5 prayers in Yiddish. The first of these Tkhines was printed. And by the mid 1600s, there was actually a siddur that was put out that was prayers in the voice of a female worshiper that had all this series of prayers. And so women, there's lots of anonymous authors. Sometimes there's a name. Sometimes the men would write under a female pseudonym because they either didn't want people to know they were writing these special prayers for women, or they didn't want to be seen as having male influence in it. But lots and lots of the prayers were thought to be written by women. They have some evidence that that was the case. So, and during Elul, when the women would make the candles, they would connect again with their recently deceased, and they would evoke Jewish lineage with these Tkhines that were these prayers. They would evoke their Jewish lineage back to the matriarchs. The patriarchs called upon the merits of these ancestors to ask for the forgiveness. And this ancestral line was seen as a source of strength and a way of reminding God of the sacred covenant he made with the Jewish people. So I just wanted to bring up that little by now, of course, not practiced anymore, Jewish custom where the women are really doing this connection thing through the month of Elul. Okay.
I just want to say that we've been involved with the Kohenet Jewish Priestess Institute for the last year, and there's one of the Kohenet Rising right now are doing the Feldmestn and going around and measuring the graves and making the candles in New York City. So it's very cool. She's talked about it at great length. So it's still happening for some.
Her name is Amy.
No, not Amy. It's Annie.
No.
Cohen.
Annie Cohen. Annie
I was
Cohen.
going to say Amy Cohen, Annie Cohen. And she has a website with a lot more information about it. I tried to distill the significant information. And in fact, the Kohenet are using one of the names. I didn't write that part down. It was too much information. One of the words that was used in a slightly disparaging way to talk about women. They have appropriated that name now.
Thanks for bringing that. That's very cool.
Let's play some shofar.
Do you want to play some shofar? Here's your
Okay,
shofar.
it's time to play
We're
shofar.
gonna play shofar. You don't
We're
have
gonna
to
stop reading for a minute.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Tikiya. Shivarim Trua. Tikiya. Tikiya. Shivarim. Tikiya.
We're playing the shofar.
Tikiya. Trua. Tikiya.
What do you think it is?
Tikiya. Shivarim Trua. Tikiya. Tikiya. Shivarim. Tikiya. Tikiya. Trua. Tikiya. Tikiya. Shivarim Trua. Tikiya.
Love the commentary.
What is it? What is it? What is it?
Thank you.
Guys, so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Good
Thank
Shabbos,
you.
everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Diane, for that kavanah.
I'm just gonna go. I set my Shabbat candles out just now because it's nighttime here, so I'm gonna go Shabbat. I wanted to do this before it was Shabbat.
Well done. Well timed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.